P. Thompson, the historian, has recently discovered behind a panel in his library, in his ancient old home, the diary of a remote ancestor, a minor landowner in Worcestershire, and a JP. The diary is undated, but despite certain discrepancies, it would seem the extracts published below date from late September or early October 1593. And it just so happened that this ancestor of his was privy to quite a lot of the affairs of state that maybe we find quite familiar now. Back to this is just reading from his ancestor's diary. Back to the sessions on Friday. A messenger hath rode to death 2 noble horses under him, with news from the council in London, and all the talk in the nation was of what he brought of a great plot discovered. It does seem a boatswain who was employed a full 8 years ago on one of the Queen's frigates hath been discovered by means of a mirror seated in an alehouse with 2 seditious printers. So imagine he was chatting in the pub, but on the other side of the wall, with a one-way mirror, people are spying on him. Yes, maybe we better tap on the mirror over there just to make sure no one's peering in. Okay, so by means of a mirror, seated in an alehouse with 2 seditious printers, and he told them about the markings on the buoys up the channel, by which, if known, the Armada would have sailed up the Thames. So this is secret navigation aids of some sort being talked about. And anchored off the Isle of Dogs. And some said the Spaniards are already there. The tower is taken. Now this is another age, because we didn't have the BBC. We didn't have mass communications in those days. So news used to spread very slowly. And all sorts of rumours abounded. Apparently the tower is taken. The Queen and court have fled to Northumberland to raise an army. The Inquisition is by now on English soil. Now, this is in the days of, great fear of the Catholic Church and of Catholicism and popery. The gentleman was much astonished at this news, and there was a general call for a warrant of hue and cry against all cobblers' boatswains, as such disaffected fellows. This is a saying that because this guy was a boatswain, let's arrest all cobblers' boatswains. But my neighbour Admiral Salt took me aside and said this was no more than landlubbers' talk. Apparently this was sweeping the nation at the time. For that in 8 years all the channels have silted and changed. The Armada is not going to get this navigational information. It doesn't make any difference at all. All the channels have silted and changed in 8 years, and the buoys have been moved about, so that every river pilot knows more than this boatswain could know. Nay, that it hath all been long published abroad for every eye to read, and even the masters of petty foreign trading vessels have it put down in a little manual. So he's saying this is just complete nonsense. Everybody's allowed to know where these buoys are anyway. This is just a way of getting the public going. But for all that, said the Admiral, it hath been a good stroke to let the common folk suppose that treasons be abroad, in that it may bring them into a better affection to the state. Or, if affection be wanting, it will make the lesser sort go in more fear. So, as you can see, some of the things we see today were going on in all this 1593, all this time ago. For the boatswain, be not hanged, saith he. What is to prevent other men who are privy to secrets of state disclosing those of more delicate and grave import, such as how the ship's officers make profits of the seamen's victuals, and how oils and spices were run through the blockade it's just different spelling in those days, through the blockade off the Africa coast, and our great ships of the line standing idly by. So he's saying there's some real conspiracies going on, this Admiral, but the public's never going to get to hear about them. What we love is false conspiracies that just get the people in fear and make them feel that they need the government, the state, more. Anyway.
Nothing new under the sun.
So, okay, so I think we're roughly, yes, we're now out of time order a little bit then. But anyway, now back to World War II and Adolf Hitler. Now, he was a very interesting figure, and I think one of the key points with Hitler, if you want to understand who he was where he came from. Where did he get his ideas from? Was he just your average Joe? He clearly wasn't. And if you look into, there's a very, very good book by Peter Levender, called Unholy Alliance, which looks at the origins of Nazism as a belief system, as a mythology, a mythos. And if you look into the origins of the Tool Society and the other occultic organisations where Hitler was nurtured and his ideas were nurtured, because he was very much into this kind of German
Mythology.
this sort of Teutonic mythology, and he was part of a whole group. A lot of the people who were running these organisations were theosophists. If you go back and research where the ideas that Hitler had came from, a lot of it is connected with theosophy, which of course is ultimately the Egyptian-style Isis-Osiris belief system. Let's go a little bit further. Of course, the other thing about World War II, it was absolutely crucial in the current situation we have now in Israel-Palestine, in the creation of the Israeli state and the justification of the creation of the State of Israel. I want to say something about Operation Gladio as well. Now, I just always like to find out how many people have ever heard of Operation Gladio. Okay, 2 people. Operation Gladio was for a long time, first time I ever heard about it was a sociology professor that was literally talking to me in hushed tones. This is the most secret operation that NATO have ever conducted. And in fact, there was a film made by Alan Frankovich for the BBC, Time Watch strand, a 3-part series all about Operation Gladio. It was ostensibly a system by which, if the west of Western Europe was overrun by the communists, by Soviet Russia, there would be stay-behind forces with access to arms caches, explosives and guns, etc., so that they could do sabotage behind the scenes. So if you imagine that the Russian troops have overrun Europe, you've got little bunches of Italians and Belgians, whatever, everybody with access to the means to sabotage the Russian war effort. Because, of course, they realised how crucial some of the partisans were in the Second World War and special operations in disrupting the Nazis behind the scenes. And that's what they wanted to do if Europe was overrun by the Russians. So that was the ostensible reason for this operation. And lots of time and money went into it. And it was organised by Brussels, NATO intelligence in Brussels. Now, what actually happened was, of course, that we never were overrun. But the people who were given the keys to these arms caches and told about it just happened to be from the far right. Now, we're talking about fascists in Italy and in Germany and Switzerland and even in Britain, actually. The SAS were involved in Operation Gladio. What happened was, I suppose the best place to start is Belgium, because that's the one I know most about. And there were parliamentary inquiries in Belgium and in Switzerland and in Italy into all this. So this is not just conspiracy theory. This is parliamentary inquiries where a lot of this information has come out. Alan Frankovich, who made the BBC films, is sadly dead now. He died in mysterious circumstances going through customs at Houston Airport. He was going to interview an ex-head of the CIA and never came out of the customs hall, had a heart attack, where you go in to say something to declare. He never came out again. He's also the filmmaker that made the film The Maltese Double Cross, which is all about the Lockerbie bombing, which is, I would say, almost certainly the reason why al-Megrahi is now back in Libya is because he didn't do it. And Frankovich, in his Maltese Double Cross film, which has never been shown in the United States, by the way, that's one of the reasons why al-Megrahi's gone back. It's because it was pretty clear that something else was going on at Lockerbie, and it wasn't the Libyans. Anyway, so to get back to Gladio, the bombings, what NATO decided to do was to use this Gladio network as a secret terror network throughout Europe. So wherever it needed to have terrorists, for whatever political reasons, it would use these Gladio cells to do it. For example, in Belgium, where they had a parliamentary inquiry into all of this, and if you ever want to look it up, and it's all in the film, the supermarket attacks happened in Belgium just after the Belgian Parliament had rejected cruise missiles. Belgian Parliament